thought we'd start with a story, and probably for most of you here, if the title of this talk attracted you, this story will resonate. We had a student recently come on retreat, Talia. She'd been meditating occasionally, and this was her first retreat. She came back and she was really glowing. She said, "Wow, I just never felt so much energy." So she felt she really came alive, full of clarity, full of a bounce in a step, really sort of feeling really clear about where she wanted to go in life. Real sort of jaunt in a step. Then we didn't see her for a while, and then when she came back, we sort of asked, how are you doing? And it's a very typical story. She said, "Well, I try to keep up my meditation, and then somehow that sort of beautiful space I sort of found during the retreat, that sort of began to kind of fade away. And then I noticed a week or two later, my energy went down again. I started feeling more confused. I started getting more moody, and somehow I couldn't keep my practice going. It just seemed life kind of was sweeping me away, and I was just kind of losing touch again." So we said, "Well, funny you should say that. That's an experience we've had many times." And through all our years of running Clear Sky Center, we've really been examining this, how people will come on retreat and really have great breakthroughs, really come alive, really sort of reignite themselves, and then how that would fade when people come out of retreat. So it's a very typical story, and I think you're going to share another story.
Yeah, I want to compare Talia's experience to another student we've had, and he's been with us for about 2.5 years now. He started meditating, and the difference between him and Talia is he also explored the 5 principles with us. He explored and he actually applied it to his life. And I'm just going to read out, he came back with some feedback after we did this course in Brazil, and he came back with some really good feedback that kind of summarizes what the 5 principles are. So I'm just going to read it. He said, "Learning about the 5 principles has been quite a twist. Although they may seem like simple guidelines for a wholesome life, if studied deeply, they can lead to quite a big positive transformation. I've recently realized how after the course, I've been shaping my life around the 5 principles in every way. My environment has changed, the way I organize my activities, and my communication and trust in people have deepened. Applying those principles can hold love and clarity even for big groups, creating a genuine awakening field." So I thought it was very beautifully expressed and really summarized the principles very nicely. And I feel like this is the essence of what the principle does. And what the principles does, it's about creating a container for yourself in daily life, which replicates the support and I guess conducive conditions that you find on a retreat, right? So that the container doesn't separate you from the world, right? It allows you to actually, to continue growing more quickly and more deeply, rather than leaving that to just being on retreat. You continue your growth outside of retreat and in your daily life. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are these 5 principles? So basically this came out as we said through our reflections, really. Wow, what's the difference between when someone's on retreat and this big transformation that probably many of you have experienced, and what's the difference outside of retreat? Because as on retreat, you have great teachers there, you have good teachings, and so on. But people keep in contact with teachers, they read books, they study outside, back in home. So we were like, well, what is the difference? So we thought a lot about this, and it suddenly hit us that what a retreat center creates is what we call the spiritual container. And the 5 principles we talk about, this is how we unpack this of what makes that spiritual container, what makes that learning center that we experience usually without kind of noticing how it's created at a retreat center. So I think what we discovered really is this is the missing element, I guess, would you say?
Yeah.
That we've kind of forgotten. We go to a retreat center, we get this great experience, and then we go back home and we don't think of bringing back those principles, that container of how we can create that in our daily life. And the great news, what we got really excited about, we discovered everything that makes a great retreat center. You can take those principles and you can bring them back to your home and to your work, in all aspects of your life. And this is really the missing element that makes that difference between staying in that sort of fully alive, growing, exploring, curious state that you might experience on retreat, and as opposed to kind of feeling you're kind of getting lost or confused, your meditation practice is falling off. The difference is really the spiritual container. So we're going to share about that tonight.
Right. So as Duncan said, I think we've realized over 15 years of running a meditation retreat center is that one of the reasons people may feel stuck when they go back into their daily life is that they skip over the importance of a container, a spiritual container. And you know, that there's great teachings out there. You can YouTube away, you can Google, you know, the Dalai Lama, and so many great teachings out there. It's just so available, right? And there's meditation techniques, there's mindfulness techniques. You know, you just say Google it, right? And you're off and running, right? But what many people come back to us and say is that, well, you know, I had this great space and retreat, but I can't actually keep my meditation practice up. I can't seem to maintain that beautiful, clear, radiant, joyful state in when I'm doing my finances, or while I'm communicating with people, or you know, in my space in general. My space tends to be cluttered and everything. So we as Clear Sky, we realized, wow, that we've got these 5 principles. Well, when you go to Clear Sky, there's principles working in the center, and people go straight into actually going deeper in their spiritual meditation practice really quickly. And so bringing them out into the world and actually making them work for you guys is what we think is the missing link here. Okay, so we're going to tell you those 5 principles now. And as one of the testimonials say, they seem very simple, but if you study them really deeply, you'll find you're applying them every day, and you're finding that you're keeping your state high and you're keeping your state well maintained. Okay, so.
Okay, so what we're going to do in the next part of the call, we're going to go through the 5 principles so you get an overview, and then we're going to take a deep dive into one of the principles so that you can get a bit of a sense of the sort of depth and exploration, how it can really help you in your day-to-day life. And another, I think, marvel of these principles is whatever spiritual tradition or meditation practice, or, you know, whatever your path, these are applicable, because there's 5 principles, and then we also talk sometimes about an umbrella principle. So that the sort of basic principle is any learning takes place in a container. So imagine you're at school and you're trying to read a difficult math textbook, and everybody's coming in and out, and the roof's leaking and it's too hot, and you know, people are having a fight in the corner. You're never going to really get through the page, right? So whether it's a spiritual growth or any kind of learning, you need that container, those supporting conditions. Basically the kind of outer clarity that really support learning. Same for spiritual practice in any kind. So the first principle we call honor your space. So you can get a sense of this if you can just imagine sometime maybe you've walked in, if anyone's been to Japan, like walking into a Japanese temple or one of those beautiful Japanese gardens. You know, very, very harmonious, very, very simple. I think you can get the experience sometimes, like in modern art galleries, you sort of go into this spacious, beautiful area. And if you notice sort of what happens to your heart and your mind and your body in that space is there's kind of you sort of instantly relax. You kind of feel yourself coming more into balance. So essentially, if there's an outer order to the space, if there's an outer clarity that's kind of beautiful and harmonious and clear and uncluttered, this very naturally brings the mind into a quieter space. So if you've been on retreat, you may have been given the instruction at the beginning is you clean out your space, you keep it neat, you give it a sweep. So it's the same principle. Basically, once you've got the space around you, it's quiet, it's clean, it's harmonious. Very, very easily, very naturally, you can begin to fall into concentration and strengthen your mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So that's principle number 1.
And principle number 2 are structure and routine are your friends. So I guess since we came out of the womb, we've been told what to do and structure has been imposed on us. So the important word here is consciously chosen structure and routine. Though at first this might seem actually counterintuitive, and this actually frees up an awful lot of energy and incredible amounts of creativity if you have consciously chosen structures and routines. And also gives you the ability to form new healthy habits too, right? So without a healthy outer structure, you won't have the container that's needed for sustained breakthrough, right? So it's the idea of actually changing your mental models and seeing structure and routine as your friends rather than as your enemies, right? So actually there's probably quite a few assumptions or beliefs that we have about structures and routines that are actually preventing us from freeing up energy that could be concentrated on unfolding quite deeply and quite quickly. So, when we're on retreat, this is all taken care of, If you've ever been at Clear Sky or you've done a Vipassana or Goenka retreat, you have a timetable, you have set meals, you have set times for your practice. And you struggle getting up at those early hours of the morning, but the joy and the clarity and the bliss that arises from, having those very consciously chosen structure and routines, by the end of it, you've got enormous amounts of energy and you're turning towards leaving retreat thinking, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J, K when I get back home, right? And then, you get back home and then you get back into the normal routine, you get back into the life that you left, and it doesn't have those consciously chosen structures and routines. And I think the important thing is we don't actually realize how important consciously choosing a structure and routine that how much energy that and how much of a container it can create in order to deepen our loving kindness, deepen our compassion, and deepen our joy. Right? So I think principle 2 is, I want to add, consciously chosen is the importance here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And maybe to share a story to tie those together, maybe at home you've sort of established a bit of a structure and you have a little place where you meditate or so on. And then, maybe you travel sometimes. So this is one thing I noticed doing business travel, for example. Suddenly you're in a hotel room or something, you don't have your usual space. And then, your structure is completely blown to the wind. So a lot of people I've talked to find in those circumstances, they just kind of end up working or eating strange hours or skipping their meditation practices. And I think those are just examples when those structures fall apart. It's very difficult to maintain that growth and energy and that aliveness.
Or the sneaky phone by the side of your bed. And the phone goes off and you're planning to meditate, and then you end up picking up the phone and seeing that you've got 3 messages from Facebook, and then suddenly it's like half an hour and you're still looking at Facebook, right? I see people smiling because I do this. I don't know if this happens to me.
Yeah, so we've set up a nice little morning routine now where phones don't go on until after breakfast. Mm-hmm. So we'll be up and meditate together. There's a sort of a set time, and once you establish this routine, it's really supportive. You can just kind of fall into it the way you do when you're on retreat. Mm-hmm. So principle number 3, this one is it's easier with others. An example there would be getting up every morning. So in our case, we're practicing together. So if I'm feeling really sleepy one morning, then Karen's up and alive, and that's really easy. And again, if you've been on retreat, you'll have noticed, you may be sitting there practicing your Vipassana or something, and then I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm falling asleep. This is terrible. But everyone else is getting there. So you kind of go, oh, I'll just hang in a bit. And then after a few minutes, it sort of switches around. And then someone else is struggling, but you're strong. So it's easier with others, really, really brings us forward just in terms of practicing together. And then I think just in day-to-day life, it's so important to have people to share with. And this is a couple of ways. Partly this is our sort of own sort of passionate engagement, sharing our explorations, inspiring different ideas with each other. And another, I think, really important aspect is just honesty. We like to talk about the honesty of spiritual friends. So someone who, good friends in your life will really be a sounding board for you, or really, call you up if your behavior is really off, if you kind of lacking compassion somewhere. It's such a safety net having good spiritual friends in your life. So there's things in the spiritual life we need to do alone, for sure. But it may be a little bit of a myth. In all the movies, the guy goes off to the Himalayas by himself, right? And there's parts of the spiritual journey to do that. But there's a whole amount of the spiritual journey that's just so much easier with others, which you have when you're on retreat. And then often for many of us, that's hard to bring home. There may not be people where we live. The people we're around with all day may not share our aspirations. So it takes some conscious effort to really build that support structure of good spiritual friends into our daily lives.
Right. Yeah, so number 4 is cleaning up big areas of your life. Frees up energy. So people who have a sort of a spiritual aspiration tend to kind of want to ignore certain areas in their lives, such as money, and such as time management as well. I feel in order to be a really great, to really unfold spiritually, we feel that, if you get really good at time management skills, your actual ability to unfold quickly and deeply happens much more quickly. And so as a spiritual orientated person, it's important to really look at those areas that you don't want to look at and really clear them up, purify them, have a better relationship with them. Well, actually, first of all, look at the sort of mental models or the assumptions that you have with them. And you'd be surprised how much energy, for example, your relationship with money is taken up in your life unconsciously, right? So it's many people that come from spiritual have this aspiration to awaken. They tend to have a kind of a distant lover relationship with money, or they tend to have very much not an intimate relationship with money. And money is something that we have to deal with in our world on a very daily basis, right? So if you clean up these big areas of life, then you're just amazing amounts of energy that's freed up in your system. Another thing is learning to prioritize and manage your time well is another one. Time for playfulness. Another thing would be gaining clarity on your direction. There's a lot of people that we hear that are meditating, but they don't know where they're going. There's a kind of a sense of being lost. And, it's funny because we live in this incredible technological era, and yet there's so much information thrown at us, and we have knowledge at our fingertips, but we don't necessarily know how to get to wisdom, right? And it's through clearing up these big rocks in our life that we're able to access clarity, access wisdom, and access a sense of spaciousness in our lives. So just one example that I want to give you is we're partners, and one of the biggest areas that we've cleaned up in our life that was around money. So our relationship as a couple towards money was quite a rocky one, and we managed to get through it. We managed to actually face those mental models, face those assumptions together, and work through it. And I can guarantee you that our ability to teach now together as a couple is a lot more, would you say, a lot more richer, a lot more,
more dynamic,
more balanced, and then it's just fun. We have, and our spiritual practice as well has got deeper as a result, because that was really getting in the way for quite a few years, actually. Yeah, and then I have a lot of people, a lot of spiritual practitioners who have their energy is freed out from actually simply getting good at prioritizing their time, doing a weekly schedule, going, no, not this, not this, not this, this and this, right? And building up that discriminating wisdom that we all so need in this world of hey, this and this looks interesting and this looks interesting. Hey, how about this? And oh my God, here's another amazing PDF file on X, Y, and Z, right? So cleaning up large areas of your life frees up energy. Principle 4.
So again, with these principles, they're kind of invisible when you're at a retreat center. So when you're going on retreat, the space is clean, it's set up for your meditation. It's kind of recapping the first 4 here in a way. You have the daily structure set out for you. You can just kind of fall into it, you know, when your meals are, you know, when it's time to do the meditation practice and so forth. You're there with a community of people, other people that are going on the retreat to explore as well. And then these big rocks, for that time, you don't, you know, your money's taken care of. The time is set, you're not kind of scrambling. So all these sort of big normal pressures, that these sort of low-grade tensions that we carry around day to day, they just aren't there. And we don't really notice on retreat that that's what's supporting us. But when we apply these elements back at home, you really notice the difference. So the last one is my favorite. So this is conversations shape the space where we meet. So it's easy to tell this one. If you imagine you've had an absolutely beautiful day, everything's fine, you're on top of the world, you come home and someone you know says one word and they can crash your whole world down, right? And suddenly you can be angry and miserable and depressed, and just with one word, or even just the tone of the word. Or the flip side is you can be having the worst possible day, everything's gone bad, and then you go home and a good friend says a couple of kind words to you and it all seems okay. So I think we've all experienced the power of words. So again, when you're on a retreat, often retreats are silent, so there's a kind of containment for that. And then through the silence of the retreat center, our inner chatter starts to quieten down as well. So we can bring elements of that. Again, this principle is about bringing elements of that into our daily life. So it's about exploring what kind of conversations do we have. So are you having conversations where you come out feeling irritated or tired or depressed, or you felt the conversations were just gossips or go nowhere? Or do you come out of conversations where you feel inspired, explorative, curious, where you feel you've exchanged ideas, where you've listened? So through the ways that we speak with others and the way we interact as groups with speech, we can make a huge difference really to the container and our energy of the day. Okay, so that's principle number 5. So these work very much together. Now what we're going to do now, I think we're going to take a deep dive into honor your space. We're going to do a little guided practice with you, so you can get a bit of a sense how, as Karen said, these sound very simple in a way, yet they're incredibly profound. And the more we've been teaching on these, the more we realize we could teach for 6 months on each one, because once you start going in, you go, and make all the connections. So we want to try to give you a little bit of the flavor of that with honor your space now. Okay.
Right, so...
and I should say we're going to open up a space for questions very shortly, if you have some.
Yeah. So honor your space is not just about cleaning your space up regularly. It involves examining the various elements that contribute to the space as a whole, right? And an honest evaluation really for each of us, or acknowledgement of what that space brings to you, you know? So I'm curious if, you know, if some of you work at home or some of you work in your office, they actually sit there and think about, well, this way I have the space arranged, where my computer is, how does this make me feel, you know? What are the elements that are contributing to my well-being here? What are the elements that are actually leaking my energy or actually not supporting me? So it's not something that we really, it sounds so simple, right? You know, but yet it's not actually consciously thought about. in our environments, especially in the West. And we're often taught that, you know, you can be in a good state no matter what, you know, and there's truth in that, but for most of us, this can be misleading, and this can lead us to miss how helpful a supportive environment is, right?
If I can just say my favorite song here, there's an Australian singer we just love to quote. She has this great song. It's kind of a joke song, but she says, I don't wash my hair now because it's not about being clean. So that speaks to that sort of myth in our culture that there's no need to pay too attention to the outer because we should be in a good inner state, whatever the situation.
Yeah. So let's just do a really quick guided meditation. So if you can close your eyes again on your space and just bring your attention to your breath again. And imagine yourself in a place you go to feel comfortable and spacious, or where you've experienced that feeling before. It could be in nature, it could be in a retreat, it could be somewhere you call beautiful. Explore what that spaciousness means for you. How does it feel in your body? What are the qualities of your mind? Let the feelings and sensations spread and go deeper. And then gently and slowly open your eyes. So it's that spaciousness and it's that expansiveness that we're looking for in honor your space. The important word here is honor, right? So what is conducive to achieving that for your everyday life?
So to give you a few story examples, so we did a 10-week version of this course in Brazil. You'll see lots of testimonials on our website if you have a look there. And one thing we did, we went out and did some exploration. So we went as a group to a local, this was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but they had a big Japanese temple locally. So we went there and we went around exploring, you know, what is it about the architecture? What is it about how the space is set up? What's the qualities of a space that support a clear state, that support curiosity, and support being present and alive. So we had a lot of fun walking around, exploring the gardens and architecture. And then it was quite fun. People had some interesting breakthroughs. And again, I think these are not often taught in spiritual circles, but we had one student come back and she was on cloud nine. She was ecstatic. And we said, well, what's different? She said, I cleaned my car. She said, you know, for 15 years, I've been driving around with a dirty car, and my partner kept saying to me, you know, and my friends, you know, God, will you clean up your car? And she was like, you know, you're not my mother. Why should I clean up my car? So for her, it was sort of freedom was not having a messy car. So she suddenly thought, you know, gosh, is that really, you know, I'm spending so much time of my day there. I come out of maybe my morning meditation, I'm off to work and my car's filthy. You know, I come out of a long day at work, I'm sort of tired and I want to rest, and I come in my car and it's filthy. So she cleaned it up, and she you know, it sounds again a small thing, but she was experiencing quite a huge difference in a day, because not only she cleaned it up, but she put little touches around it that just made it a nice space, so that when she went in, she just could go and relax. There was little reminders of clarity for her, little reminders to be present. So the car became a support to her instead of a drag. Any other stories you want to share? Oh, I had one other story quickly, which is this is very important as well for your meditation space, for example. So having a small dedicated space for your meditation practice can make a huge difference. So we were surprised, talking with different people who meditate, and our students, some people might meditate on the bed or the sofa or so forth, and it makes really a difference if you can have a little dedicated corner, and you don't need much space. So Mary Lynn here, who's been one of the co-organizers here, she's a tiny little house in Quebec City, and she's done a very simple creative job of creating a little corner with a little shelf, so it doesn't even take up ground space. And she's created a beautiful miniature little shrine there for meditation. And the effect is that it invites you to practice in the morning. So you wake up, there's your space. You easily, naturally go and sit there. You naturally fall into mindfulness, and your mind knows it's time to be present and alive. Whereas if it's just clearing up a bit of clothes off the sofa to sit down, it really is not inviting. And it's so easy then to skip past your practice. So again, small changes. They sound simple, but they can really be profound.
Yeah, and it's even more important today with so much of our time spent in virtual reality, right, with technology, right? So that relationship we have with our bodies and our space are becoming more challenging, so that honor your space is got a deeper meaning to it, say, than 10 or 15 years ago, right?
And it applies, well, as Michelle introduced very nicely at the beginning, applies to how these principles become very interesting is you can apply them in many circumstances. So if you consider this virtual space where we're meeting, the guidelines and ground rules Michelle suggested at the beginning help a space for mutual learning and sharing, similar to any meeting space. So these principles are really applicable in so many situations.
At the beginning, we talked about there's so many great teachers around, there's so many great teachings around, there's so many great meditation and mindfulness techniques. And just to, say this again, that we feel this is the missing element for people to develop an ongoing, consistent meditation practice. We've often found from doing this pilot program in Brazil that it made the Sangha there, or this community of spiritual seekers, much stronger. They had principles that guided their meditations, that guided them as a community. And we just really feel that this is a real missed part of what monasteries in the ancient times they took for granted, and that we're missing these elements now today. And we feel that this is the bridge between actually feeling that you're growing more deeply and you're growing more quickly at a pace that you want, and being the best person you can be for yourself and for people around you. So we would be very excited to have you on our 7-week course, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, I think we've both been teaching meditation something like 15 years, and my observation has really been once we made this connection of bringing these retreat center principles out into home and life, as Karen said, just seen a huge difference in people's ability to really live the life they want, to make a positive difference, to have a steady meditation practice, right. To really sort of keep in line with their vision. Yeah, so many years we've seen people struggling with this. So, and again, whatever your spiritual practice, whatever your teacher, this is the spiritual container, as we call it, is just really an essential missing element, not often taught. So yeah, we really welcome you to come and explore with us.
Yeah.
And now I think we'll open up for any questions, and you can also write in the chat.
Yes.
So there's already one question in the chat from Kara of how do we sign up?
Oh, good question, Kara. So go to our website. If you go to www.clearskycenter.org and go to the programs page, you'll find the sign up page. And also there, if there's any questions we haven't addressed tonight, you'll find lots of information, lots of details, and you can sign up there.
We'll also send the recording out to each of you on this call tonight. And there we'll also give you a link to where you go to subscribe for the course.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Okay, any questions? Vanessa.
Vanessa, hold on.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hey. I was wondering about the principles, if the idea is that they're like a I'm not sure what the word is, but self-sustaining practice, or if they're meant to build on a retreat, if you know what I mean, or they are dependent on like the energy of a retreat and how to carry that forward.
Oh, I see. That's a good question. I think it's both. Yeah, it's not that you have to go on retreat to get the energy and then use the principles to sustain, but certainly these principles we found really help with integration. So for people that go on retreats, it's less of a retreat daily life. It's less of a switch, because you can rest back into the container you've built back in your home. So it's the switch is much less dramatic, and you can maintain much more the sort of clarity and presence that you may have experienced on retreat. Having said that, even if you haven't done a retreat, these are just great principles for, helping keep your life in, giving a good container for your life and your explorations.
Keeping clarity and joy to the front, rather than having just the normal phenomena of life lead you around wherever, right?
So they're kind of a platform. It's really a foundation that we can rest in, that really just helps every exploration in our life. Okay. Well, again, we thank you very much for joining. We hope this was interesting, sparked some ideas. If you're interested to find out more, go along to the website. You can find out full information, or send us a note, any questions. And we look forward to seeing some of you on the course, and have a very wonderful evening.
Yeah.